Some people believe that superheroes are just children's literature and have no intellectual value of any kind. That superheroes do nothing for us because they are fantasy. But the fact is, we do need superheroes. They reflect our interests and protect them with more than just their powers. Superheroes have been there for American citizens in times of need. Now, obviously, superheroes aren't real, but they do more for us than anyone can understand. Throughout history, superheroes were at our side ready to fight with us to defend truth, justice, and the American way. And it all started with one hero, born out of the Great Depression and an impending war. In the 1930s, the U.S. economy became crippled by overproduction of products, no social safety net, unequal distribution of income, unbalanced foreign trade, and mechanization, which replaced workers and caused high unemployment. Food production also declined during the Dust Bowl in Midwest farms, making food hard to come by. It was a hard time, full of fear and poverty. Americans didn't know how they were going to put food on the table. The world needed a hero, and not far away, in Cleveland, Ohio, two teenagers, Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel, were creating just that. They were creating a hero that could defend the weak in these hard times, a hero that also became known as the New Deal Avenger. This hero was named Superman. Superman, the hero who could save the American people from the Great Depression, just as Franklin D. Roosevelt had with his New Deal policy to reform, recover, and protect America and her interests. People nowadays may not be aware of it, but when Superman came out, he was a breath of fresh air. And within a few short months of his debut in Action Comics in 1938, Superman was flying off the shelves and into the hearts of American citizens everywhere. Superman rose in popularity, at one point selling 250,000 copies per month. Something about Superman captured American citizens. Maybe it was the escape into a fantasy where someone from a completely different world could come to America and defend the rights of her citizens and protect their freedom. This was especially relatable to the immigrants who were swarming to America to avoid the impending war in the late 1930s. Families such as Superman's creators were Jewish immigrants, escaping the Nazis and fleeing to a land who pledges to uphold neutrality. However, it became evident that America would enter the First World War, and Americans needed another superhero, one who could protect not only America, but America's interests overseas, and maintain the American spirit. So in 1941, America received that hero by the name of none other than Captain America. It was only a matter of time before there was a patriotic hero, and Captain America could deliver the boost many Americans needed during the war. Captain America was used as propaganda, encouraging people to recycle metal for bullets and buy war bonds to fund the military. Captain America was encouraging not only to children and those living in America, but also to the troops who were at war. During both of the World Wars, 1 out of every 3 American soldiers were reading some sort of comic book, oftentimes Captain America. For many soldiers, it kept their hopes alive and comforted them of stories of defeating Hitler and saving the American people while also reminding them of home. And while men were fighting in the war, women were forced to leave their housewife style and enter the workforce to feed their children. More than 6 million women left home to enter the workforce. It was hard for many mothers to work for such little pay and put food on the table for their children. To leave their children at home and to work in hard conditions made for men, women were put to the test, working just as the men did and supporting their families on their own. They needed inspiration to get by, and Wonder Woman was the answer. Coming out in the same year as Captain America and America's entrance into World War I, Wonder Woman was the encouragement women needed. Wonder Woman was a direct reflection of her creators Charles Moulton and H.G. Peter, who were both in support of women's rights and equality. America was full of danger and fear caused by the Japanese, and Wonder Woman was willing to fight against these forces on behalf of American women. More than 70% of girls read comic books during the First World War. Most of these comics they read were about Wonder Woman's adventures. Wonder Woman became an inspiration to young girls for generations to come. As human technology advanced, the superheroes did as well. When Sputnik was launched into orbit in 1957 and the space race began, superheroes could then be located outside of Earth's atmosphere. Heroes such as the Fantastic Four, premiering in 1961, were scientists who were studying cosmic rays in outer space when the rays hit their ship and they became the Fantastic Four. As humans reached farther and farther into space, we began to see how small we are in the universe, and the possibility of other life increased. These ideas led to superheroes that are not even from our galaxy, such as Thor in 1962 and Guardians of the Galaxy in 1969. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Cold War that started in 1947 was raging on with tensions never wavering, and Americans were anticipating war every second of the day. Bomb shelters were built in homes, soldiers roamed the streets, and alarms went off in the middle of the night for any minor sign of attack. The fear that lingered over the country entered the homes of every citizen, and as we know, comic book characters reflect the writers' hopes and their fears. The people needed heroes to protect their homes while the deafening roar of the Cold War pounded the doors of American families. The Hulk and the Ant-Man were two of these heroes. They could save the innocent from their anxiety in those times of need. As America entered the 1960s, the African American community was demanding their rights through actions from civil disobediences to violent demands. Events such as the Freedom Summer and Martin Luther King Jr.'s March on Washington were examples of peaceful demands. But for every movement, there are extremists, such as the Black Panther group. This group started many fights and raids in a destructive cry for equality. Well, the writers of the first black superhero heard the pleas of the people and gave the superhero a surprising name, the Black Panther. Considering the Black Panther's rap sheet, it was surprising to many that this superhero caught on. But nonetheless, comics proved that they are willing to break down the social barriers to do what's right. Even as comics entered their Bronze Age, they continued to surprise many in 1971 when Spider-Man released a 3-part series on drug abuse. This was shocking to America because the Comic Code of America forbade the mention of any drugs, negative or positive. But The Amazing Spider-Man was printed anyway without the approval stamp. Drug abuse became a large topic, and Spider-Man was instigating the topic to become a more serious issue that should not be ignored. A month after the issue came out, President Nixon gave his speech on war on drugs, declaring that drug abuse is, quote, public enemy number one, unquote. 2 years later, in 1973, the Drug Enforcement Administration was created to fight this war and protect the youth of America. Superheroes continued to decline in popularity in the 1990s. U.S. was in a time of peace since the end of the First Gulf War in 1991. And during this time of peace, superheroes were not needed, and so they were out of the minds of the American people. But then, on September 11, 2001, the World Trade Center fell. This terrorist attack shook America and pushed Americans into war in Afghanistan and Iraq. In the early 21st century, these wars and the frightening global warming issue makes many people around the world feel uneasy. And just as they had before, superheroes were entering the minds of the people to help them understand and cope with the issues we face. We are seeing a re-emergence of superheroes into American society. But this time they are coming by media such as movies, television shows, and video games. From classics such as Superman and Batman to new heroes like The Incredibles. Superheroes have always been there to save us, to aid us, and to give us hope for the future. They give us support and motivation to make changes, like in 2012 with the world's first gay superhero marriage. Superheroes represent the hope, peace, and justice that the people of not only America, but the people around the world need. And superheroes will continue to be there for us on the TV, in their comics, and in the hearts and minds of the American people. They have been used as propaganda and to instigate change, and is why they are important in our history and for our future. We will always need superheroes, and they will always be there for us.